Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 102nd episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you very much for joining us. I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe to a premium membership. You get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns for the Boston Sports Journal, so go to bostonsportsjournal.com. Sign up there for a membership to get my stuff on the Bruins, Mike Giardi, Greg Bedard on the Patriots. Tons of good writers on that site, so go check it out. With me today on the show, I have New England Hockey Journal's Evan Marinovsky. Evan, how's it going?
It's going great, feeling good. How about you, Haggs? It's been a busy week.
Doing great, busy week. I got a fifth grader that's graduating from elementary school, so all the pomp and circumstance that's going on there, he's actually having his clap out last day today, which means they walk the halls, all the fifth graders, and they get claps from everybody.
I remember
else
this. My school did that. It was great. Yeah, I remember dreaming of that day, in first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and then it hits, and you're like, "Oh, this is my big moment." It's like the red carpet.
Yeah, it's a huge moment. You wait all 6 years of elementary school for that to happen, so it's a pretty exciting day for him. All right. Evan, I think you know what we're going to talk about today. There's been a lot of argument the last couple of days. We knew the Linus Ullmark trade was coming. We talked about Linus Ullmark and really the Ottawa Senators on the last Pucks with Haggs podcast pre-trade. So now the trade goes down. Linus Ullmark gets traded to the Ottawa Senators about, an hour, 90 minutes before Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. A final FU from the Bruins to the Florida Panthers right there before the game starts. Linus Ullmark gets traded to the Senators for a 2024 first-round pick, the 25th overall, which, ironically, 10 years ago, the Bruins used the 25th overall pick to select David Pastrnak. So all these people poo-pooing and crapping all over, this is a bottom of the first-round pick. This is a terrible pick. Why they trade for this? You got David Pastrnak with this exact pick 10 years ago. So 25th overall pick in the draft. They got Mark Kostelic, who is a bottom six, fourth line, heavy hitter, center, big body, wins faceoffs, very physical, drops the gloves, like the kind of player the Bruins needed for their bottom six and their fourth line. They get Mark Kostelic, 25 years old, so he could be around for a little while. And they also trade for the very controversial Joonas Korpisalo, a goalie that has played almost 300 NHL games, has a .901 career save percentage, has been pretty good at times in Columbus, was good when he was with the LA Kings, but was arguably, according to the eyeballs and the advanced stats, the worst goalie in the NHL last year with the Ottawa Senators, had a really bad year for a really bad team. So they take on him. He signed for 4 more years, $3 million a year, because Ottawa picked up 25% of the salary. So we can get into the first impressions of this deal right now. Evan, just give me yours, and then we can go back and forth a little bit. But I'm curious to hear what you thought about this trade.
Yeah, it's interesting. All along, I kind of, there was that little bit of time right at the end of the season where it was like, I don't really know what the price is going to be. And then the Ottawa Sun comes out a couple, month or two ago and says, oh, it's a Chychrun, a first, and then another prospect. And it's like, okay, well, those are two, those are two different ends. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. And it's like, okay. And so last week I had said, if they can get one of either Chychrun or just getting back into the first, I'm happy with the deal.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that they got a first. I think that's good. Ironically enough, it's their own pick, so they just brought it back.
Yeah,
but I'm happy that they're back.
Tyler Bertuzzi trade to get Tyler Bertuzzi a couple of years ago.
Yep. And I'm happy they got that. I'm happy they got back in the first. Obviously, Linus Ullmark not agreeing to an extension or not, saying in principle he's going to agree to an extension there, lowered the price quite a bit. So I'd said last week, if they can get one of Chychrun or just get back into the first, they were never going to get the 7th overall pick. That would be crazy. But again, I think Linus Ullmark not agreeing to an extension there was going to lower the price. We knew that when we saw that Elliot Friedman tweet. And then we saw the bunch of tweets like Mike Ronell and Empty Netters podcast being like, Bruins fans are going to hate this return. I like that they're back in the first. What I don't love is they don't have as much cap space to play with as I thought they would have when they were going to deal Linus Ullmark. And that, to me, is the real holdup with this. You only create an extra $1.165 million in cap. I said all along.
Hold on, just one sec. Which You're right, because that's based on expectations, but you still have more cap space after this trade than you had before this trade.
This is true.
You have created an extra $1 million plus in salary cap space, So like, if people are like counting cap space they never had, basically, and trying to say.
I think they expected to have it. That's
you never had that cap space. The bottom line is you created cap space with this trade. For some people, it wasn't enough cap space. And the other part of it, too, I think, is people just viewed this as a salary cap dump. It was never that. It was going to be about getting value for this player and creating salary cap space, right? I mean, that's if you're trading a goalie that won the Vezina Trophy, you're getting value back and you're creating cap space. And they accomplished both of those goals.
What I don't think Korpisalo is getting value back, though. I get that
you were probably going to get a second round pick if you just tried to make the trade without taking on Korpisalo, and it becomes a first. When you took on Korpisalo, to your point, when Linus Ullmark was not going to agree to a contract extension sight unseen before going to Ottawa.
The Ullmark extension is key in this because I think that is the reason. If he agrees to an extension, it's like, all right, we'll bump the price up. You don't have to take Korpisalo, whatever it is. I think it's an interesting idea with like the idea that if they didn't take a first and they just took a second, like the Senators have the 39th overall pick, and that's their first second round pick. So like if the Bruins had taken that, I think an interesting hypothetical is, would you have done the 39th pick and Kastelik for Ullmark, or would you rather do what they got? Now, I like that they have a first. I really do. Like, I like they have the 25th.
I think they would have gotten hammered just as much if they didn't get a first round.
100%. I agree, too.
They would have gotten hammered crushed. They did not get it. Yeah.
They would have got crushed. Now, the difference between the 25th and the 39th pick is not crazy, but at the 25th, you do get obviously, you get a better assortment of players to pick from. If there's a center you really like, there's a couple guys in that area that probably should be around, which we can get into at some point. The Korpisalo thing's tough, though. I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, goalie Bob can fix him," and obviously, if anybody can fix Jonas Korpisalo, it's goalie Bob. Goalie Bob has been outstanding. He has a crazy track record. He's a goalie guru. But I just think when you look at, I think everyone just says, "Oh, Senators bad, Bruins good," and you look at defensively, they weren't far off last year. And I know obviously the Bruins have the better defenseman, but just look at the numbers, right? Bruins gave up more high danger chances last year. The Bruins were bottom 10 in chances allowed last year. Ultimately, Linus Ullmark was outstanding last year. Jeremy Swayman was outstanding. We said this a lot last year. Their goaltending bailed them out in a lot of key spots. Now, obviously the Bruins are better on paper than the Senators, and Korpisalo should see a bump in his numbers coming here. I just don't know if it's worth $3 million a year. I just don't know if it's worth $3 million. And there's potential there. He's young still. I would have rather gone with a veteran, if you could find a veteran backup, and then use that extra cap space. I know the Bruins didn't have it, but use that for a wing in free agency. That's
in a vacuum, I agree with you. The perfect situation would be Jeremy Swayman. You pay him $7-8 million. Brandon Bussy's making less than $1 million. You're spending less than $10 million on your goaltending tandem. As far as salary cap space goes, that would have been the perfect scenario, right? But in order to make things happen, it's not always going to be exactly what you want. But for people to act like paying $3 million for a backup goalie is this huge salary cap albatross is friggin' ridiculous. He's slightly overpaid backup goalie. He's an established goalie in the NHL that's played almost 300 games, has a save percentage over 900. Has had some good seasons. He had a horrendous year last year. But we all know goalies are like running backs in football. They're like relief pitchers in baseball. It's very erratic. Good year, bad year. They can go back and forth. That's why there's not a lot of value in goalies in trade, because they can bounce back and forth, a lot of those guys.
And I stink next year.
and I fully expect Korpisalo to do that in Boston with a better system, with a better defense in front of him. I think the advanced stats and some of the underlying numbers might say that Ottawa and the Bruins had the same kind of defense, but I don't buy that. I think the Bruins defense is much better on paper and in reality, and when you watch them play, than the Ottawa Senators were and are. Look, and somebody pointed this out to me on Twitter yesterday. if friggin' Chad Johnson, who I even forgot played for the Bruins, could come in here, be a backup goalie, and have like a 925 save percentage
That
and
was
have
classic.
a great season in Boston, like anybody can come in and be successful in Boston if you're a goalie based on the coaching, the system, the players around you. And I think it's going to be the same for Korpisalo. I think what it comes down to is he becomes a slightly overpaid backup goalie that you're paying probably like an established backup goalie like him. You'd probably want to pay a couple million, pay like what you paid Halak when he was here behind Tuukka Rask, right? It's the same sort of situation. You're going to be paying him a little bit more, but we're also talking about a guy that I don't expect to play more than 20 to 25 games behind Jeremy Swayman. I think Jeremy Swayman's going to play more. I think he's going to be in the 60 to 65 game range of how many games he's going to play next year. He's going to get paid like a number one. He's going to play the amount of games like a number one. And you're going to have Korpisalo, if he's on the team, playing much less than Ullmark had in the past and would have. And he's going to be a true backup. So I think the impact in terms of the player, the performance, and the salary cap, which is $3 million cap hit, Evan, is 3.4% of the Bruins salary cap. That is a friggin' drop in the bucket. Like, people are acting like they traded for a guy that's going to get owed like, $8 million a year for the next 6 years. This is
That
not
wouldn't
the
be
case.
fun.
This is
that
not
would
the
not be
case.
fun.
This is not even a player that it's going to cost you. It's probably $1 million more than you would have spent on a good backup, an experienced backup goalie. So you're talking about it costing you maybe like some kind of fourth line scrub at $1 million a year. Like it's not. This is not some crazy thing that they're throwing away and just shoveling money into the fire. And people are acting like they don't have all this cap space anyway to sign their players. They have more than enough cap space to get the number one center, to sign Jeremy Swayman, to bring in a winger to replace Jake DeBrusk, and have a good team, like bring in 2 impact forwards. They have all of that even after making this trade. If you had to make this trade in order to move a player in Ullmark that did not want to be here anymore, was not going to play on this team next year, the Bruins didn't want him back. I don't think Jeremy Swayman wanted him back. Nobody, I think, wanted a situation where he was going to be a disgruntled backup next year and be pissed off the whole year because he wasn't playing and he was worrying about his contract. They had to move him, and for a number of reasons, to make sure that they got the draft pick they wanted in this draft, to make sure they didn't pay him the $1 million salary bonus that he was due on July 1 for a player that wasn't going to play on the team anyway. And just because of the situation, like they all talked at the end of breakup day about how, Linus wants to come back and we'll be happy with the two goaltenders and the great tandem. Nobody wanted that. That was complete bullcrap by all of those people. Nobody wanted Ullmark back. He didn't want to come back. And all these people, these fans out there, they're saying you should have just kept Ullmark into the season and kept the tandem going and kept the goalie hugs coming.
The hugs, Haggs.
Enough hugs.
Hugs with
We had
Haggs.
the hugs for the last 2 years. Move on from the hugs. Okay, I know it was the thing that everybody cheered loudest about when the game was over, and it had its great moment, even though it drove former NHL goalies like Andrew Raycroft crazy to watch that stupid stuff. But it's time to make peace with the fact that the goalie hugs had an expiration date, and it's now gone, and Linus Ullmark has moved on. And the guy that all the fans chanted about in the handshake line after the second round playoff series was over, they were chanting Swayman because he was so awesome in the playoffs. He's now your number one guy. He's going to be playing.
No, they were chanting Sway Mark. You heard the Sway Mark. The fans spoke. The fans wanted the tandem.
Definitely not. That was the hug faction, the Huggy Bear group that wants the goalie hugs to remain. But they need to make peace with it. They need to have a good cry and think about the goalie hugs. Maybe watch wistfully some videos on YouTube of Ullmark and Swayman hugging together. And
someone
really
will
just
put it together a compilation.
Really
Someone will put together the compilation.
Evan, you should create the compilation. Just let all the fans cry it out for a good 10 minutes. Just sob until their eyes are red and there's tears everywhere, and they're just like they can't breathe because they're crying so much. Like, get it out of your system.
Hey, a good cry can be good. A good cry can just
it's very cathartic. But get it out of your
cathartic.
system and then move on, because now the Bruins are like, this is my thing, Evan. The Bruins are better today than they were a couple days ago before Ullmark got traded. Long-term and short-term. They're better with Kostelic. They're better with the first-round pick. They're better moving on from the Ullmark situation where he wasn't going to be happy. And I think they're going to be perfectly fine with Korpisalo, an established NHL goalie, as the backup if that's what happens. Now, if it turns into a situation where they can spin off Korpisalo because he's a little bit less of a price tag now for a draft pick, that's even better. And maybe that doesn't happen until a year from now if he has a decent year and rehabs career and his the way people view him by having a good year as a backup with the Bruins, whatever it takes. But I feel like it's going to work out in the end. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. Some great features on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesday to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. It's fun and pretty simple. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Ullmark had to go. I mean, I think there's no debating that. Like, it had to be done. What I wonder about, like, with Korpisalo, I mean, there's a couple things.
And Ottawa was the only place he could go now after the Kings and the Devils had traded for goalies. That was the other challenge of this deal, is you're only negotiating with one team, the Ottawa Senators.
This is the thing, and I saw in the Ottawa Sun, like, Vegas was interested, Detroit was interested. I don't know how serious those got. I can't imagine they got very serious.
Yeah.
Although him going to Vegas would be hilarious with Cassidy. I think that would be just outstanding stuff. There's a couple things. I mean, I think the cap space end of it is tough, just given, like, I think we all expected the cap space to just magically be off the books, and then you'd have more cap space. Like, now, I mean, they have like 21.5 in cap space. Let's say you put 8 towards, let's just say Elise Lindholm, 8 towards Swayman. So that leaves 5.5. That's enough to get one good winger. That's enough to get, if you want to do a defenseman for some reason, like, probably get 2 defensemen. I think the idea, though, is that Ullmark,
because DeBrusk is going to.
Oh, yeah.
You have to get a winger.
100%. You have to get a winger. But I think the idea was, like, if you had that extra $2 to $3 million in cap space, if you just dealt Ullmark straight off and the cap space was open on the books, you could have gotten a wing and maybe like a Brendan Dillon, or you could have gotten 2 wings, of different prices. And I think this just kind of hurts you depth wise. This may have cost you a scorer and then another scorer. And that is sort of my issue with it. Obviously, yes, it adds $1 million in cap space, and that's good. But you could have. I just feel like you could have had a little more cap space, and that would have helped. For like an extra $2 million, I don't think it's gonna. You're not gonna be able to get a scoring winger for $2 million. Like that's not $2 million. But what I'm saying is, you'd have that extra $2 million to then give to. Like, not saying the winger would be $2 million. I'm saying, like, if you let's look, it's 5.5 right now. You add 2 to that, so it's 7.5. Maybe you get Duclair at, I don't know, 3.5 or something like that, and then the rest for Toffoli, something like that. And again, both those guys could be over that price. I could be way out of the ballpark, but those kinds of guys you would have for that. Obviously, $2 million, you wouldn't. A scoring winger for $2 million, you would hold on to like it was going out of style. Yeah. But I think the extra cap space would have helped, and I think it would have made it more palatable. The other thing with Korpisalo, what happens with Bussy now? That's the other thing. Like, I know they just signed him to a 1-year, 2-way deal. Do they trade him? Like, do you get value for him? I mean, like, maybe there is a little value there that you could squeeze out, because Korpisalo's here through 2028. Yeah, the other part of this that I don't think I fully have grasped yet is, like, if there's a possibility of burying Korpisalo in Providence too, and if that would give you, you know, any more savings, which it might, beyond what you're already saving on the salary cap. So, like, that would be a tough thing to do with a guy that's an established NHL player, and it would not be a good look. And I don't think a lot of players would like that if you traded for a guy like that and then you put him in the minors. But, like, that's also, I think, a possibility. And certainly I think it's something the Bruins would investigate if they thought they were better off, and it would add more cap space having Bussy as the backup and putting Korpisalo in the AHL. And, you know, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but I wouldn't rule that out at this point. No, I wouldn't. And I think I don't have the number in front of me. I think they do get savings if they put
they would. I don't know the exact number, but they would get some savings.
I don't know the exact number, but as you said, I mean, that's a tough thing to do to an established NHLer. I've seen some people on Twitter being like, you know, can they flip Korpisalo? Ottawa tried to forever. Like, I don't think they're trading Korpisalo right now for anything.
No, no. I think it's more realistic that Korpisalo is the backup, plays like 25 games, plays well as the backup. Has that Chad Johnson bump where he has a decent year as
The
a backup for the
bump.
Bruins, and then
The Nicholas Svedberg bump,
exactly, and then they're able to spin him after this coming season for some kind of a draft pick, and maybe they even have to like retain 25%. But it would be worth them to do it, worth it for them to do it, and get a couple of million in savings on him. So I think that's a possibility after this year is over if everything goes well. But I don't see that. I think it's very optimistic to think they might be able to get a draft pick for Korpisalo this summer.
Oh, yeah, that would be wild.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
It's like no, he did a couple sessions with goalie Bob on the ice, video sessions. He's good. He's fixed. We'll take a third for him. I think it's tough. Like, if I was to grade this trade, I think I'd give it like a C minus. And I know that that's not optimistic because, again, I do like the first. I do like that, but I think there was that part of me that always thought you get the first and you get the cap space.
Yeah.
And that would have been fun. And I think that would have been obviously a much better situation. You're right, though, in that I don't think there were enough other teams to negotiate with. It's not like the Bruins could say, okay, you're going to give us Korpisalo. Let's go talk to other teams as well. I also wonder if Sweeney waited too long with Ullmark. I don't know what was going on with New Jersey. And I know they picked up Markstrom, but and obviously the deadline had its own issues. And
I also think like LA was not an option because I think they tried to trade him into LA last season for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that was the trade that Ullmark nixed and used his no trade clause and did not want to go to Los Angeles and did not want to go all the way across the country. So I think that one was not going to happen at all. Like, I don't think that was ever going to get revisited. I don't know if he was willing to go to New Jersey or not. What I had heard with Ottawa was that Ottawa was on his no trade list as well. And Daniel Alfredsson reached out and talked to Ullmark and convinced him to go to Ottawa and that it was going to be a good place for him. And that's when he waived his no trade, when Alfredsson reached out and talked to him just about Ottawa and kind of like the market and all that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happens, just given the weight that Alfredsson carries with Swedish players. And I think in general, he was probably also explaining how Swede friendly Ottawa is too. They've had some great Swedish players over the years. And I think it's a very good place for Swedish players to go. So I think it's a place that Ullmark will be very happy. And it would make all the sense in the world to me if something like that did go down.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's an interesting tidbit. That can go on Twitter. That can be a nice little social post. But yeah, I mean, if that's like, that would sway someone. And it's just like how Boston's a great place for German players. Like Leon Draisaitl, I think that can work out great.
Steinberg's going to tell him how much he enjoyed Boston when he played for the Bruins.
Hey, Leon, when you're coming over the red line, you fake that dump in, the goalie loses the puck, and then you throw it on net, and it goes right in, and it works every time. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing with Ullmark. Obviously, I'm glad they're back in the first round. Kostelik's an interesting depth piece. Probably means Maroon is gone, I would assume. Because you've got the big physical presence. I don't think he's going to be a guy that slots in your top six. I don't think he's going to be a guy that magically develops all this offensive skill. I think he is what he is, and that's okay. So a nice little depth piece there, and I think I'm fine with that.
Just go on YouTube and watch Mark Kostelik's videos. Like, all the videos from Mark Kostelik are him blowing up somebody on the other team and then fighting the other team's toughest guy. Like, him fighting Tom Wilson after like blowing somebody up on the Capitals behind their net. Him fighting Matt Martin after blowing somebody up on the Islanders. Him fighting, who was it? There was a couple other guys. Like, there were videos of him fighting a couple other guys, and it was like the absolute toughest of the tough guys. And he's got the long hair, and it's like flying around as he's throwing punches, and he just looks like a scumbag. He looks like a guy that's got a lot of FU in his game. That's going to bring some attitude and some of that in-your-face style to the Bruins, which I think they need more of, and I think it's going to be good. And he can win faceoffs, which they needed a center that could do that too, in a big way. I wonder what it means for Johnny Beecher.
That too.
They bring in a guy like that, because I think it either forces Johnny Beecher to go to the wing or to go back to Providence. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out when he gets up here. But I think Kostelic is the kind of guy, frankly, that the Bruins need to get more of, and is going to help them in the attitude department, the physicality department, and the toughness department. And like, after watching the Panthers win the cup this year and the way they won it by just like hammering everybody on the forecheck constantly for 2 months over the course of the playoffs, I think you're going to see more teams start to value physical players that can just kamikaze bomb defensemen on the forecheck and get really physical and wear teams down, kind of old school. And I like it. I hope other teams copycat the Florida Panthers in the way that they won, because I think it's a great way to play hockey, and it's an entertaining style that we should go back to.
I agree with you. It's hard, I think, though, because so many of their top guys are like that. Bennett, Tkachuk. I mean, obviously, yes, there are stylistic implementations you can make, for sure. In the sense of, hey, you're going to forecheck harder, 2-1-2, all that stuff. But do the Bruins have the personnel for that? Like, down in the bottom six, you can get those kind of guys. It's hard, though, to get a Matthew Tkachuk. It's hard to find a Sam Bennett. Which that part of it's tough. And the other part that I think Florida did so well is they shook things up. They went out and made that Matthew Tkachuk trade 2 years ago. Now, that is a 1 in a million type trade that just was kind of a perfect storm. It came together. But, like, you think back to that, and you think back to not just the Tkachuk trade, trading away Jonathan Huberdeau, who had a great season, who'd been there for years, trading away Mackenzie Weegar, who was a very strong defenseman. But also, they let Andrew Brunette go. Andrew Brunette, who was an interim coach, but still led them to the President's Trophy. To also pull the plug on that, they're a bold team. They were a bold team. And I know that everybody around here hates them because they've knocked the Bruins out 2 straight years. I get that. But that's a team who, you're right, you do want to copy, but not just in the on-ice style, but also how they managed that roster. Now, it's tough, obviously. I mean, we've talked about this a number of times. Like, who are the core players of the Bruins? They're all locked up long-term. They got no move clauses. Like, you can't. It's not like the NBA where it's like Kevin Durant's going to be on his 5th team, or like stuff like that. But, getting those guys before they sign their big deals, if they're not fits for your core, I think it's an interesting thing. So, yeah, the Panthers are a good team to copycat from.
Let's also thank Game Time, your best place to get Red Sox tickets at Fenway this summer. And actually they're winning some games, so you probably do want to get Red Sox tickets at Fenway summer. Although, for me, I might use Game Time. I saw yesterday that Journey and Def Leppard and Heart are going to be playing at Fenway Park in August. So I may use Game Time to go see that threesome, because I went and I saw Poison, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, and Joan Jett last year at Fenway, or it was 2 years ago. I can't remember. That was like one of the all-time great concerts. Def Leppard was unbelievable. I would definitely go. I mowed a lot of lawns in middle school with the Walkman playing Def Leppard in my ears, Evan, back in the day. Young Joe Haggerty was like 12, 11 years old. Game Time is a great place to get tickets for concerts, baseball, all that stuff right now. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Zone deals, you save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. This is just good stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, create an account, download the app, and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I agree. And I hope it happens. Before we go, Evan, I know you're a draftnik to a degree. I know you you look at the prospects, and I think you just came out recently with a list of the top 10 New England prospects for the draft. Is that right? Was it?
I did. Yes, I did.
Anybody from New England that you think the Bruins could be targeting with that first round pick, or is that most of the prospects from New England, it's Cole Yzerman, and then there's like a drop off to when they're going to get selected, or anybody that you think locally the Bruins would take, and any names that you potentially think might be available that the Bruins would be interested in that 25th pick?
So it's interesting. With the 25th pick, Teddy Stiga from Sudbury is an interesting one. He's a left winger. He's 5'10", about 176.
He's Junior Eagles, right?
He's Junior Eagle, former Junior Eagle, former Belmont Hill, went to the national program. was really kind of irrelevant his first year as a U17, but as a U18 took off, played with Haggs, was outstanding. I think 25 is actually like the first slot where you'd consider him. So I don't think he goes at 25. I think he probably goes somewhere in the high second, mid-second round. I think that's more his value. Great player, though, and I think at the NHL level someday, years down the road, I think he's going to be a very valuable middle six winger.
Yep.
I just don't think the Bruins, I don't think that's what they're going to prioritize. I don't know if he's the best available at 25. It'd be awesome if they got him, but for me. But
yep.
I don't think it's what they need, and I don't think he's the best that they're going to be able to have at 25. Other than that, for New England prospects, not really. I'd say, like there's a defenseman, Elliot Greenwald from Vermont. He's committed to Quinnipiac. He played in the USHL this year. Really good shutdown guy. I think he's going to be like a fourth rounder probably. Ben Merrill's an interesting one. He's from St. Seb's. He's from Hingham. 6'4", really skilled centerman. A lot of upside. Going to Harvard. Guy that has the ingredients to be a really good, top 6 NHL player someday. But he's raw. He's still kind of raw, and I think that's more 4th or 5th round pick, kind of a flyer you take on a guy. And then there's another kid I really like, Gio DeJulian, who's from Kent. He's from Connecticut. He went to Kent. Cornell commit. Cornell always churns out good, quality pro players. I think he's going to be a pro player someday. I think he can fit anywhere in a lineup. I think someday he's going to be a guy that you can stick anywhere, whether it's the AHL or the NHL. I think he's just a reliable, high compete kind of player. In terms of that 25th pick, though, I think it's interesting because I think there's a lot of questions you can ask with this. Should the Bruins, we know center's probably going to be a priority. Do the Bruins go after a high upside, a boom or bust type guy? Or do they go for someone who they historically have gone for in the past, which is more of a sure thing?
Yeah.
The Cole Baudouin, I hope I'm saying that right, from the Barrie Colts kind of fits that mold. Corey Pronman. Again, I haven't seen this guy, so I'm kind of quoting Corey Pronman here when he said, he's probably a third line guy in the NHL, but you know what you're getting. It's a sure, it's probably going to be a sure thing.
It's a Trent Frederick type pick at that spot.
Exactly, which is okay. People think every first round pick needs to be this superstar player.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard. You can't always hit.
That Trent Frederick example is a really good one, Evan, because a guy that they passed up on and they could have had, and a lot of people thought they should have taken with that pick instead of Trent Frederick, was Alex DeBrincat. And
100%.
That's where I feel like I'm of the camp in the first round. You take a flyer on the high ceiling guy. And
I agree.
You take the guy like Alex DeBrincat, who scored, what was he scoring, like 60 goals a year in junior or whatever it was back then. And he was definitely in that mold of young, undersized winger, that super fast, super skilled, produces a ton of offense that you thought in today's NHL was actually going to be okay and be a player because, those kind of smaller players can survive and thrive these days. But it's the perfect example of what you're talking about, where you go for, you swing for the fences and try to hit a home run with the first round pick rather than playing it safe and get a player is going to be in your lineup, but probably not as high up.
I agree, and I want them to kind of take a swing. What I think is interesting, though, when you think about this, they haven't had first-round pick the last 2 years. Prior to that, it was Fabian Lysell, which is what they did. They went for the best available, and it's been kind of the development hasn't worked out, I think, the exact way they wanted it. We don't know what he's going to end up being in the NHL. There's been some issues down in Providence. Divers obviously mentioned that quite a bit. So, again, people assume, they're playing Shattuck St. Mary's and St. Andrews College is playing Shattuck St. Mary's and Mount St. Charles. Yes, they are, but the best kids are not staying till their U18 year. And this is a whole nother discussion on player development. Back 20 years ago, they were. Now those best kids, the Cole Iserman at Shattuck, Macklin Celebrini at Shattuck, James Hagens at Mount, they're playing U14, U15, and they're gone. They're going to the national team. They're going to the USHL. This is the other end of it with there's still good kids at the U16 level. Then the U18 level, the talent, there's a lot of late bloomers. It's a lot of people hoping to get those last minute college commitments. So again, I'm not saying Dean Letourneau played bad kids or bad teams. He didn't.
But it wasn't the highest level of competition either.
No, it wasn't. For a guy like him, for someone who's 6'7", and there's nothing wrong with what he did, by the way. You can do that. You are allowed to do that, and I think it's good for a lot of players' confidence. Dominate the level. I think that's a really good thing.
Yep.
But projecting for the NHL draft, is hard with a guy like that, because I think scouts would have wanted to see him play against older kids in the USHL or the BCHL. And I think they didn't really get that. Now, rankings have him everywhere. Like The Athletic has had him at like 20 to 25. Some don't have him in the top 100. Some have him in the middle at like 40 or 50. He's tough to project. Now, like when I was telling this to Conor Ryan yesterday, he's like, that's the kind of guy I would want, because what it could be, you're taking a big swing on it. I think there's other options. Like a Sasha Boisvert is someone I like, a former Mount St. Charles guy, lit it up this year for Muskegon in the USHL, high offensive upside. That's the kind of guy I would like down the middle, but I don't think he's going to be there at 25. So, you want to take a big swing. Letourneau is a huge swing. It's a project. He's going to be at BC this year, was supposed to be in the USHL, but went to BC now because Will Smith is gone. We'll see what ends up happening. What I could see happening is he gets picked in the first round, let's just say by the Bruins, and then has growing pains as a freshman, and everybody's like, oh my God, this pick is a bust. And it's like, no. If you're picking Dean Letourneau, this is a 4 to 5 year process. This is,
right.
It's going to be a while before you see him. I mean, like, it's 2024, like think 2028, 29, 2030 when he's like paying dividends. But again, if that turns into Tage Thompson, then you take that.
Yep.
But it just comes down to what you want at that pick. So I don't know, because the Bruins didn't have a pick all year in the first round. So I never really talked with anybody about like what the Bruins want in the first round. So I can't really tell you what they want, but
that's why I will not be in the Sphere in Vegas this weekend, Evan, because I was like,
that's right.
Why bother? They're not picking until the fourth round, and the joke is on us. Trader Don Sweeney.
Yeah, I'll be in Buffalo at Select 17 camp, so far from the draft, which everybody's pissed. Buffalo. I don't know. It's dumb that they schedule it the same week, as considering these are all the top 17-year-olds who are going to be picked for next year's NHL draft.
Yeah.
Why would you schedule that the same weekend as the current NHL draft? Because none of the scouts will be there. So,
yeah, they're all going to be ripping it up in Vegas at the Sphere. Why would they?
No one's choosing Buffalo over Vegas except for me.
Definitely not. All right, good draft talk, Evan. Thank you very much.